Welcome back to another video. In this video we will have a look at Azure AD Identity Protection. Now, on a daily basis, Microsoft collects and analyzes lots of anonymized signals, and they claim it's in the region of trillions of these signals as part of user sign-in attempts. Now, these signals help with building an understanding of user sign-in behavior, and because of this it helps identify potential risky sign-in attempts. Azure AD Identity Protection, with its machine learning capabilities, can then review these user sign-in attempts and take action if there's suspicious behavior. And this is all about looking at detecting risks based on these signals and then taking actions on the risks before they become a real issue. Identity protection allows organizations the ability to automate the detection and remediation of identity-based risks, and allows you to investigate risks using data in the portal, and you can also export the risk detection data to third-party utilities for further analysis. There are two types of risks: user risk, and with a user risk it's calculated offline, and it represents the probability that a given identity or account is compromised. And then there's sign-in risk, and with a sign-in risk, which is calculated offline and in real time, it represents the probability that a given authentication request isn't authorized by the identity owner. And these are the two types of risks Azure AD Identity Protection has a focus on: user risk and sign-in risk. Now, just to have a quick look at the required roles, to work with identity protection, you need to have a user account with one of these roles, which are on the left here. So you need to be either a global administrator, a security administrator, security operator, a security reader, or a global reader. And it gives you the information here on what you can do with these roles, and on the right hand side here, what you cannot do. And of course, global administrator has full access to identity protection. So it has ability to do absolutely everything, as you can see from here. Now, here are the license requirements, and it requires Azure AD Premium P2 license to do absolutely everything. What we can see here is we've got Azure AD Free and Microsoft 365 apps. We've got the options here of what it can do. And then we've got Azure AD Premium P1, and then we've got Azure AD Premium P2 on the right hand side here. And what we can see, Azure AD Premium P2 has ability to do absolutely everything here in terms of risk policies, security reports, and things like that. What we can see with the free or Microsoft 365 apps or Azure AD P1, they don't have these capabilities here. You can see it says no, and down here, but they do have some capabilities in terms of security reports, but they are limited on what they can see. With Azure AD Premium P2, they have full access to the reports as well. So there's three different types of reports. One is risky users, the other one is risky sign-ins, and the last one is risky detections. And this page shows some of the different Azure AD Identity Protection risk detection methods, or we can call them types. And these are sign-ins from anonymous IP addresses, users with leaked credentials. They can be malware-linked IP addresses, impossible travel to a typical location. And what this means is a user could not have signed in from that location. So, for example, they sign in from the US, and then an hour later they try and sign in from Australia. Then another risk detection is sign-ins from infected devices, sign-ins from IP addresses with suspicious activity, unfamiliar sign-in properties, leaked credentials, and password spray. And password spray means using the same password on many different accounts before moving on to another password. So spraying the password. So these are some of the things Azure looks at when detecting there is a potential risk. It looks at these things, but these are only some of them. There's more as well. Now, there are three default policies that we can enable, and they are quite limited in how much you can customize them, but they are commonly used policies for most organizations. If you need further customization like these, you would typically use a feature known as conditional access instead, which has more granular controls built into it, but I'll be doing that in my next video. And with all of these policies, you can exclude users as well, not just include users, such as administrators or what's known as break glass administrator accounts, to ensure you do not lock the administrators out of the system. And looking at these policies, the first one on the left is the multi-factor authentication registration policy. Now, this ensures the user is registered for multi-factor authentication, which could be needed for the sign-in risk policy. It's used in that policy, and it's a good way to ensure all users are registered for MFA, multi-factor authentication, right from day one, as it helps roll out the feature the first time the user is signing in. And it's one of the self-remediation methods for risk event within the identity protection solution. Self-remediation allows your users to do something by themselves, so this helps reduce help desk call volumes. It's basically users remediating themselves without having to call a help desk. And we will have a look at these in the portal just in a second and have a look at the assignment and the controls and all the options, etc. But the next one on here is the user remediation policy, and this policy will respond to user accounts that may have compromised credentials. It can do things like enforce the user to change his or her password, so you can see that over here. And sign-in risk remediation policy. This policy looks at suspicious sign-in attempts using both real-time and offline signals, and you can set up additional ways of verifying it's a genuine sign-in attempt by prompting the user to try to sign in using MFA, for example. So this is the whole point of MFA on the left-hand side here. So you enroll on MFA on the left-hand side, get all your users to enroll, and then you can use it with your sign-in risk remediation policy, and we can see in the controls here it requires multi-factor authentication. Now, it's also good to have a look at this on the portal as well to see how we access these policies. So let's jump on the portal. If I drag my portal into the screen here and we are at the home page, now there's a few different ways we can access this. We can type in the Azure AD identity protection over here, but we can also go into all services from here. And then if we go down to identity down here, it's in the middle here, Azure AD identity protection. We can also access this from the Azure Active Directory as well. So back to all services, identity, and we've got Azure Active Directory. If we go into that as well, and we go right to the bottom here in the security option, click security, and we can see it here on the top left under protect. So we've got conditional access, identity protection. Now if we click identity protection, mine's a brand new setup and I've got no information in here, but this is the main identity protection overview page. And this is the reason why I've got some images in my slides so we can see more information in these portals and see what's going on. So let's jump on back to the PowerPoint slide. And this is the same page we was just on in the live portal. So this is an image I've taken off the Microsoft website, and what we can see in this image is the identity protection overview page, and it provides a summary of the identity risks. The risk trends help with identifying attacks and also help with understanding the effectiveness of your policies. What we can see is on the left hand side here there is the user risk policy, the sign-in risk policy, the MFA registration policy. So we will have a look at these in the live portal itself next. And we can also see where we can review the reports down here. Then there's notify to notify the admins on alerts, and we can also send weekly digests here as well. And in the middle it gives us an overview of what's going on, so we can see some charts of new risky users detected. We can see a count, so that's 501. And then we've got the new risky sign-ins detected. We've also got some figures here as well, count, and we can see the unprotected risky sign-ins and also the protected risky sign-ins detected. And in the square boxes over here we can see high risk users, medium risk users, unprotected risky sign-ins, legacy authentication, and identity secure score. Now these blue links are all clickable, so you can click on them, and the one I wanted to show you in particular is the identity secure score. And I've got an image of this on the next slide. And with the identity secure score, it helps you to monitor and improve your identity security posture and lets you know how secure your AD tenant is. And it's also available in all editions of Azure AD. It looks at the security configuration and it compares your settings with its recommended best practices and does this every 48 hours. So Microsoft has some best practice recommendations, and there's a percentage to indicate how well you're aligned with their best practices, which we can see over here. So this one shows that it's 40.34% secure, I suppose. So it's 40% secure. So it's showing that 60% from being fully secure from a Microsoft security best practice recommendation perspective. And we have some comparisons here. So we have the company and then we have against the industry average, so what the industry average should be, and what a score for a typical company is as well. These figures for some reason do not look right at 0%. And then we've got the score history, so the history of the score, how it's been moving up and down over the days and weeks. And what all this is made up of is these improvement actions down here. So we can see these require MFA for administrative roles, designate more than one global admin, etc. So we've got this one, use limited administrative role, and this score is 0.84%. And the impact of any changes made to this one is low, which is a good thing, which means it's not going to cause any major impact. And the implementation cost as well is low, which is good, so it's not going to cost a lot of money. So Microsoft do give you some indication of the changes and how it would impact you. Now if we go to the live portal and have a look at the secure score, we can see on the right hand side here, identity secure score. If we click on it, my live portal is a lot lower, so it's 14.29%. And we can see the comparison is a bit different here. So mine is 14.29%, and typically it should be 55.68%. So that's the typical average, I suppose, of all other organizations or companies. But what I wanted to show you on the live portal is these, they are clickable. So if we click on one of these, let's go to the require MFA for administrative roles and click this one. We can see on the right hand side we've got the improvement action, and it gives you its information on what it is, and then the score impact, the current score, the maximum score, and we've got a status, so we can change the status on here. So it's currently at to address, but we can accept the risk, or we can plan it, or we can specify that it's resolved through a third party, or resolved through an alternate mitigation. And then what we have down here is the description, what it is. So it requires MFA for administrative roles to make it harder for attackers to access the accounts. And down here it shows us the user impact, which is low, the implementation cost, it's low as well. And then what am I about to change? So it gives you some information about what you are about to change here. So it's quite detailed and quite good. And then just as important, it tells you how it will affect the users. First, users with administrative roles need to register for MFA. After each admin is registered, your policies then determine when they're prompted for the additional authentication factors. So the identity secure score looks like a really useful feature to help improve the security posture. And we can obviously click on any of these, designate more than one global admin. And again, it gives you the similar sort of information we just had a look at. But you can also have the option to set recommendations to be ignored if they don't apply to your environment. An ignored recommendation does not contribute to the calculation of the overall score, so you can turn them off. Going back to the identity protection overview page, if we have a look at the protect policies, user risk policy, sign-in risk policy, and the MFA policy, we can click on these. So user risk policy is this one here, and we can see the policy name here, and then we've got assignments. So we've got assignments, and then we've got control. So this is who are we assigning this policy to, and then control is the action. So at the minute it's assigned to all users. If we click all users, we can change this, and this is where you can exclude users as well, so you don't lock out your administrators from the system. And we can choose all users or select individuals and groups. And then we've got this user risk here, which is currently set up at low and above. If we click that, we've got these options here on the right: low and above, medium and above, or high. Now when you enable a user risk policy or sign-in risk policy, you can choose any of these thresholds, and this lets you control how aggressive you want to be in enforcing any controls for suspicious sign-in events. And the guidance is to use a high threshold during a policy rollout, and then you can use a low threshold for better security later down the line. And Microsoft does not provide any specific details on how the risk is calculated, but each level of risk brings higher confidence that the user or sign-in is compromised. Now for control, is set up on block access or allow access, but this requires a password change, and it uses the Azure AD self-service password reset feature. And at the bottom we've got the option to either turn it on or leave it off. So we can enforce a policy or leave it turned off. Now it's very similar for the sign-in risk policy as well. So let's go to sign-in risk policy and discard the changes. Again, we've got assignments to specify our users. We've got the sign-in risk level. Now for controls, it's slightly different. So if we go to block access, click on it to change it. And the options here are to either block access or allow access, but require multi-factor authentication as well. And then the last one is the multi-factor authentication registration policy. So if we go to that one, we can see again it's got assignment and it's got controls. It's quite simple as this one. So you assign it to whichever users. Again, you can exclude users as well if you wanted to. And then the control is to require Azure AD multi-factor authentication registration. So that enforces users to register for multi-factor authentication. And then we've got these reports, and I've got PowerPoint slides showing better images because I've got nothing in the portal. So if we go to risky users here, we'll usually see the risky users and we'll be able to do things as well. So let's go back to the slides and have a look at those instead. Just before we go to the reports, we can see the risk detections here as well. So I've gone through some of these, but at the bottom here, I've got a URL, and if we go to this URL, let me drag the URL page into the screen, and this page shows some of the risk detections. So at the beginning it shows us what is a risk, and if we scroll down, it tells us a bit more about the risk types and detection. So risk, and it shows us that risk can be detected at the user and sign-in level, and there are two types of detections calculated. One is in real time and the other is offline. And then down here we can see that there is premium detection, and premium detections are visible only to Azure AD Premium P2 customers. We can see the sign-in risks here. So these are some of the risks we had a look at earlier. And then if we scroll down further, we can see the non-premium sign-in risks as well here. And then it's the same for the user linked detections as well here. So we can see the premium user risk detections and the non-premium user risk detections as well. So it's a great page to have a look at what the risks are and read the descriptions as well for them. Now, having a look at the different types of reports and what you can do with them. This image shows the risky users report, which shows which users are most risky and why they are risky. So we are in the report section and we are in the risky user section here, and the information provided in this report, you can find things like which user are at risk, have had risk remediated, or have had risks dismissed. And you can see some of the options here. So dismiss users risk, confirm users compromised, and we can see the usernames of the users and their risk state. So all of these have been at risk, and then the risk level, how it's categorized their risk level as low, medium and high. And if you've got thousands of these risks, you can filter for them as well here. So these are filters. You can add the filters from here. And if we clicked on one of these, you would see the details about the detection as well. I think I've got a slide coming up in one of the next slides. And you can also see the history of all risky sign-ins and the risk history. And then you can choose to take actions on these as well. So if you click on these three little buttons here, and eventually in one of the options is to take action. So you can do things like reset the user password, confirm user compromise, which you are confirming that the user has been compromised. You can dismiss user risk, you can block user from signing in, and you can also investigate further using the Azure ATP. And it's similar sort of thing with the risky sign-in report as well. So the risky sign-in shows which sign-ins are most risky and why they are risky. You can again filter risky sign-ins by using the user or the IP, the status, location, risk levels or detections that you want to have a look at. And in the report you can see which sign-ins are classified as a risk, confirmed, compromised, confirmed, safe, dismissed or remediated. You can see real-time and offline risk levels associated with the sign-in attempts. You can see detection types triggered, conditional access policies applied. You can see MFA details, device information, application information and location information as well. If we have a look at the next slide, I think we can go into some of this. So here we can see these are clickable links, the user and the IP address they're coming from, the location. If we go to the next image, if we click on one of these links, we can see a lot more information in here. And you can drill into some of this. So we've got all the basic info here, and then we can click on the device info to have a look at device information or risk information or the MFA information. And there's a couple of actions we can do as well by clicking the three buttons here. So we can do confirm sign-in compromise, which means to confirm it's a compromised sign-in, or we can do confirm sign-in safe, which means you are confirming the sign-in is safe. Let's jump back onto the portal, have a look at these reports where I have no information, and that's why I showed you the slides instead. But what we can see here is these options here as well: auto refresh, show dates as local or UTC, risk state. We can specify, choose any of these, and we've got also the option to add more filters here. So you can add filter by user, username, risk level, or risk details. And the same sort of thing for the risky sign-ins as well. So if we go to risky sign-ins, we've got all these criteria here we can change, and then we can add filters from here as well. You can see there's a lot more filters in the risky sign-in. And we've got risk detection report as well. So risk detection report, let's go back to the slide. And this report includes any identified suspicious actions related to user accounts in the directory. And both types of risk detections, which are the user and the sign-in linked, contribute to the overall user risk score that is found in the risky user report. And you can use these reports so you're able to respond quickly to the suspicious actions. So what we see in the slide is we see the detection time, the user, the IP address it's coming from, the location, and we can see the detection type. So we can see this detection is an anonymous IP address, and down here we can see it's a password spray. And again, a password spray is an attack that attempts to access a large number of accounts with commonly used passwords. So it will use the same password across different user accounts to break into that account. And then we've got the risk state. All of these are at risk. And that's really it. I think we have covered the base of identity protection, the high level basics of it. And in my next video, I will be covering off the conditional access feature. There is another report here. It's called Risky Workload Identities. I have no slide for this one, but basically what this is so with the other reports, it mainly looks at users, detecting, investigating, remediating the users. But with the risky workload identities, it also looks at applications and service principals and managed identities as well. And the filters may give us a better indication of what it covers off. So if we click on add filters, we can see here we can have a look at service principals, service principal ID, app ID, type, risk level, risk detail, and risk last updated. But it's these three here that it has a focus on: the service principal ID, and the application ID here.